commitment of your life. It really is.
I love what I do. I love my job. I love coming to work every day. I love working with kids.
I can allow this to define me, or I can change how I look at my profession.
First year teaching was supposed to be a 6-week replacement, and it ended up being the full year, and I had 6 different math courses, so I was put through the ringer, but in the end that ended up being pretty positive because I got to experience all the math courses that were available.
When I first started teaching, I left St. John's as a 23-year-old who had never been away from home, and I went to a small outport on the northeast coast of Newfoundland, where it was isolated enough for me to get northern allowance. So I left a pretty sheltered life and went to a place where I had no relatives, didn't know anybody, and it was August 28th I got the job, and September 2nd I started teaching. There were a lot of nights I'd be on the phone with my mom, crying because of some kind of experience that I had, and that I can't take this anymore. But I put up with it for 3 years.
I was hired in 1991 to start the calculus program here. That was when the AP calculus program was first becoming a thing in the high schools here in the city and around the province. And so I was hired half-time, and I had a calculus course and a grade 10 course and a grade 12 math academic course.
In hindsight, I feel like I wasn't prepared. I mean, it was a shock. And when you've been out of school for a long time, you kind of feel like, oh, the students are going to be interested, and it'll just be natural, and they're going to follow along with what you want to do. And you realize really quickly that they have their own agendas, right? I mean, they're in there, to do as little as possible, to have a laugh, fool around, and all that kind of stuff. And just the whole business of being in charge, and in essence forcing them to do what you want. I mean, that was a new thing to me, and I really wasn't. I wasn't fully prepared for it, and that was a big transition.
I was just so delighted to take a job, to have a job, that I was giddy, and did not realize the scope of what I was teaching, because I was teaching grade 7, 8, and 9, 3 separate religion courses, grade 10, 11, and 12, 3, so that was 6 religion courses because they were 1 credits. Then I was also teaching several English, which is my main subject area. I have a double major in English and religion.
Fairly similar to what I'm doing now. So when I came in, I had the full choir band program that I was responsible for, plus the music courses that were here. In addition to that, there was, I think, whatever the version career development was at the time. It wasn't called career development, but it was only a half-time position. So in that half time, you're still here day in, day out, doing the same planning. So it was like you had a full-time job, even though you're only getting paid for half of it.
I guess as much as anything else, learning the courses. We all, anyone teaches in a particular area has a particular skill or talent for the course. For the material, but what it comes down to is how can you deliver it. Framing it in such a way that you could bring it to the students, and also being open enough to change the way you explain things. You've got it organized one way in your own mind, maybe that's the way you learned it, or maybe that's the way you've come to learn it, but you've got to understand there's different ways to go, and different ways that people take information in.
It felt like it was an impossible task to prep for what would have been 8 or 9 different courses. And when I think of that now, I shudder. There were times when I came home and I said to my husband, and I remember one day coming home in tears and thinking, is this going to be the rest of my life? For anybody who's new and listening to this, that changes. I think in your first year, often a lot of things get thrown at you. Luckily, you're young enough that you rise to the challenge. But that's not a norm. I never again taught that many. My biggest challenge my first year was the mass of material that I had to prep and cover. And again, I think I'd have nightmares if I thought about it.
For me, it was learning how to balance work and my regular life. So I learned not to put off all my marking to the last minute when I also had like other things to do in my real life. So just keeping on top of things quickly as going through.
I had to learn very, very quickly in my career, within the first couple of days, weeks, to say, I don't know, but I will find out. And that was a lesson that I think served me very well, and something that I think all new teachers should really learn to say. Another challenge I had that year was with the academic math level 3. I think I had 44 or 45 kids in my class. There was not enough desks, and it was a rush to get a desk, and kids sat on heaters, and you just had to deal with it. That was the reality of it back then.
It was. The classroom management was a massive thing. I mean, just the whole idea of students. I mean, and a lot of them. I mean, you know, like they're the same size as me. I mean, even though they're a lot younger. I mean, physically, they were, you know, like equal to me. And here they were, like putting their hand up and asking to leave the room. And I know that that's standard procedure, but it was just they're asking me, you know, if they can leave. And I'm, well, yeah. It took me a while to kind of assume that role, that I was in charge and I determined where they sat, if they came or if they went, and they expected it of me, but it took me a while to kind of expect it of myself.
Oh my God, what do I do? Like, I don't know. I'm supposed to be the expert now, and really I just graduated, and they're looking at me as if I have all the answers. So that was a big challenge the first year. Like, you're supposed to know everything, and if you didn't, they picked up on it. Oh, they would pick up on that like you wouldn't believe. And they would, in some cases, like, set it back to you. You're supposed to know that. Well, no, I can't know 100% of everything. So that was a big challenge. It seems like when I went to university, everything was, oh yes, they're going to go and they're going to sit, they're going to listen to you, you're going to teach this fabulous lesson, and they're going to be, oh, loving it. And that wasn't what happened, right? The students, some of them sat, some of them listened, some of them would get up and walk around, some of them would talk back to you. It wasn't the ideal situation that we were taught in university.
I think a lot of what I do in class is operant conditioning. Like, instead of at the beginning of the year getting up and rhyming off a list of expectations, you kind of go in there and just assume things, and then if they step out of line, you correct it. So, and if they do something that you like, you praise it. Because if you stand up there in the first day and you list off all of the things and here are my rules, they're not listening to that.
Well, more than anything else, it was about getting myself organized, getting my materials squared away, asking others who'd been around longer to share what they had, going through people's file cabinets with their permission, of course, to see what kind of notes and what kind of tests they had. I don't forget, this is 1986. This was pre-internet, so I didn't Google anything. It was all go seek and find and ask and put it on a photocopier.
If I didn't know now what I didn't know then, right? If I could go back and do it all over again, especially my first couple of years teaching, knowing now what I know, oh, I mean, it would be, but you learn with experience. Yeah, right. And the main thing is that you do learn with experience.
You can expect me to be perfect, but I don't have to be perfect. So getting that in my head, that I don't need to know everything, that there are other people who have expertise there that can help me, to talk to those individuals, to get help, to bounce ideas off of, to say, this is what I tried, it didn't work. Do you have any suggestions?
That's also where I learned when I first started teaching. I thought I'm going to be the teacher that like never loses his cool, right? I'm never going to have to yell at the kids or anything like that. And I learned after about like 4 months, I was dreaming about like flipping desks and like getting really, really angry. So I realized what I call like control outbursts, knowing that when you're getting frustrated, how to kind of like vent that off while you're in control of it, as opposed to letting it build and build and build and build and build till you might do something that you're not fully in control of.
With today's student, it's becoming more evident that kids learn different ways. And I think a teacher has to be able to recognize that and be willing to offer kids maybe different ways of presenting material, looking for differentiated instruction is the big word right now, and be adaptable. I think that's the key. Hard work, study in relation to the math courses initially, and I think for any new teacher coming out, you really have to be prepared. Do not try to go into a classroom and bluff your way through, because kids will see through that and you'll lose all respect. You have to be prepared. So if you're going to assign problems for kids, make sure you can do them. So I spent a lot of time in those initial years doing problems, working through stuff, looking stuff up, asking for help, asking for advice.
Most important advice, I think, is understand the students. Know that they're not perfect. Know that you're not perfect. Know that it's not just you in the school. It's 30 other people. It's 5 other people, depending upon which school you're in. And you all work together to help the students.
Only make rules that you can enforce. If you can't enforce it, don't make it. And the other part about making rules, if it's going to be in your classroom or in the school, make sure you're aware of what the office rules are and office policies, because your rules can't supersede office rules. So if they make a rule, and this is the way it has to be, then your rules have to fall in line with those particular rules.
You're not going to be able to help all the students. Sometimes you can work really hard and you can't beat yourself up over that. But I used to say to myself, because remember I said my first year was horrible. So when I finished there and I left and I said, you know what, I can allow this to define me, or I can change how I look at my profession.
The best advice I ever got was it takes you 3 years to learn how to teach a course. It's really a process. Don't get frustrated when something doesn't go the way you expect it to in the first 2, maybe even 3 years, but a good 3 to 4 years. And this is advice I got from someone who I consider to be a master teacher. And it relieved an awful lot of stress on me, I can tell you. Because when you go after that first year and you feel like you haven't done a good job, and you really don't know where to turn, who to ask, and there's really nothing to compare it to, I keep going back to that bit of advice to someone said that 3 or 4 years, that's what you can count on.
You know, there's two types of personalities, reactive personality and passive personality. Now, there's more to it than that, but if you're a reactive personality, you'll be reacting to students' misbehavior every minute of every class, right? So the thing is, you got to kind of let it, some of this behavior in the classroom, you're going to have to let it go, because you can't fight every battle in the classroom, because there's just not enough time if you're instructing.
Create your own classroom space. So as much as possible, and if you can, go to school like a week early. Create your classroom space. Set up your room how you want to set it up for you. And check on it regularly to see that it's staying the way that you want it to be. And if it's not, keep moving it back to where you want it to be. Because your space has to be your space. Otherwise, you'll never have a comfort level in that classroom.
My first piece of advice would be go to where the jobs are. Don't be afraid to make sacrifices in your first year. If you need to go to a remote community to get a job, go.
First, if you don't really want to be a teacher, then don't be a teacher. I mean, even the people who love it, it's still really stressful and hard and also rewarding, but you have to really, really want to do it in order for it to feel worth it.
Find a balance. the school could easily become 24/7, and you get tired and maybe a little cranky. So you want to, designate time that you're going to take for yourself and for your family.
The second thing is get to know the kids. So for me, I always do a lot of extracurricular, whether it's working with social justice clubs or the plays and musicals and sports teams. And that's where you get to really make those relationships with kids that you remember and cherish.
First thing I would say is don't be afraid to be wrong. Don't be afraid to apologize for being wrong. I've always done that, even if it's something as simple as I remember recently having a student asked to go to the washroom, and people were saying outside the door somebody was calling her. And I said, are you really trying to get to the washroom? Are you trying to go have a walk? I don't put up with the walk and so on. But anyway, I let her go. She came back after and she said, Miss, I was so mortified. She said, I needed a feminine hygiene product, and I was trying to be discreet. I didn't want to say it out loud. My friend met me at the door with it, and she said, I wish you hadn't grilled me so much on it. And I apologized profusely, and I said, I'm very, very sorry that I did it that way. I said, a lot of times when I do it that way, I'm keeping people from going off on a run. But she said, Miss, I know. She said, you didn't mean, she said, I just had to tell you. But I think it's really important that they know that we treat them as human beings, and that if it seems like we don't, that we're sorry for it.
If you don't love teaching, find something else to do. It's not fair to you, it's not fair to the kids. If you're not going into teaching because you really want to be a teacher and you love what you do, go do something else.
Be diverse. Don't just think in your own subject area. Because with the way the curriculum is, you never know exactly what you're going to teach from year to year. So you can have a course thrown at you that you may not have any qualifications for, or it may be a particular course that there are no real qualifications for, and it's just a bit of life experience. So be diverse and be flexible for all of these changes that are going to happen. You can plan for your lessons day in, day out, and you don't know what's going to happen within that class. So between being diverse in what you're going to do and being flexible, that would probably be the biggest thing. Get involved in the school community in your university. If you're a math teacher, come down and get involved in the musical. If you're a social studies teacher, find a team to coach. Be diverse.
You should also do a bit of research about the students you're going to teach, because you're going to have students who have all kinds of needs. Who have files that will let you know that they need certain interventions. And it's good to know that ahead of time, and so that you can anticipate what kind of, maybe changes in assessments or school class delivery that you would do.
Learn the names of your kids. Within the first couple of days, weeks, for me it's harder now, I'm getting older, it takes a little longer, but learn the names of your kids. Nobody likes anything more than to be called by name. And that will save you a lot of heartache along the way.
Get realistic with your expectations. As good as you are teaching, as interesting as you are, as well as you know the material, students are coming in there with a different agenda than you have. Not everybody has the same experience that we had as teachers in the sense that most of us enjoyed school. We like learning. That's why we came back. That's why we're here. But students have most of them have a different outlook, and school is not the same thing that we went through.
That would be my biggest advice, to look at the positive that you're experiencing, not always focus on the negative. Because if you focus on the negative, you're not going to be in this profession very long.
I think sometimes students don't realize that we do see them as human beings, and when we do, I think they give you back what you give them. So I think if that was my biggest thing, we need to be light, we need to lighten up. I always say, guys, it's not brain surgery. If I mess up and I put a mark in wrong, you'll let me know, we'll fix it. There's never anything unfixable, and to be available for them if they need help. And you might think that's massive, and sometimes it is, but the dividends you reap with a few students, you might make a difference in somebody's life one year.
I hope you all enjoy your careers. It's been a fabulous career for me. I love coming to work every day, and I wish everyone all the best.